the spaces between love, self, and growth. A reflection on the invisible threads that shape our journey. It all began on a journey to a distant place. One of those adventures that promises transformation, the type you hope will open you up in all the right ways, only to discover it exposes you in ways you didn't know were possible. Isn't that how life operates? Genuine beginnings do not announce themselves. They quietly emerge, concealed beneath sunsets, street food, and late-night discussions with strangers. You believe you are traveling to uncover peace or adventure, and instead, you find yourself feeling vulnerable, laid bare, and unraveling at the seams. You encountered the photographer there, the almost, the one who embodied potential. Initially, there was a magnetic attraction, a sense that something authentic could unfold. He was charismatic, imaginative, someone who knew how to capture a moment perfectly in both images and words. However, beneath that shiny facade were fractures you did not know how to interpret at the time. Fractures that slowly became apparent, the way he evaded the truth, the incomplete tales of his life back home, and finally, the discovery that he wasn't merely emotionally unavailable. He was still connected to someone else. A girlfriend, to be precise. The kind of red flag that does not wave gently but hits you hard, leaving a stinging reminder. Yet, even with that knowledge, a part of you, the fixer, the optimist, lingered longer than it ought to have. Because sometimes we are drawn to individuals who reflect parts of ourselves that we have yet to heal. The photographer mirrored your desire for adventure and depth, but also your old habit of pursuing what was never wholly yours to possess. Before him, there was the ex, the one who presented stability superficially, but was built on obsolete foundations. He was the kind of man who seemed solid, reliable, someone you could envision building a life with, or so you believed. But gradually, the fractures became visible here too, and they were not of the kind you could overlook. He was entrenched in tradition, in beliefs that felt more like cages than comfort. Conversations that could have served as bridges between your worlds transformed into battlegrounds. You recall the way he scoffed at your spirituality, dismissing it as nonsense when you spoke about energy or the universe. He rolled his eyes when you wanted to hang something related to chakras in your shared environment, dismissing it as trivial. There was also an emotional distance, one that no degree of closeness could bridge. You would inquire about his feelings, what was preoccupying his mind, yearning for intimacy in words, but it felt like pulling teeth. The rare instances when he did open up felt like hard-won victories, fleeting moments that left you feeling more drained than fulfilled. Then there were sharper moments, more cutting. The cruel jokes masked as humor, the way he would silence you in the car when you tried to warn him about driving too close to branches, as though your voice were an annoyance. These were microaggressions that accumulated, brick by brick, into something heavy and suffocating. And beneath it all, something darker simmered. The misaligned values, the subtle yet undeniable racism he would let slip in conversations, the antiquated worldviews you could not continue to ignore. It became evident. Love, regardless of its depth, cannot flourish in spaces lacking respect and understanding. The ex was a lesson in that, a painful, necessary lesson. Then came the one you friend-zoned, the emotional grenade. This was intended to be straightforward, safe. A friendship, nothing beyond that. He was kind, thoughtful, someone you felt comfortable with, but only on a platonic level. You thought you had been clear, that you had set the boundaries gently yet firmly. But emotions, as they tend to do, have a way of slipping through cracks. His feelings grew quietly, like ivy climbing a wall, until one day they were everywhere, unavoidable, heavy, clinging. When you revealed the truth, when you reaffirmed that your feelings did not align, it exploded. He became a storm of vulnerability and misplaced blame, unloading his anguish onto you in ways that felt manipulative, even if unintentional. Lengthy messages brimming with his traumas and pain, all laid before you. He did not ask if you had the emotional capacity to handle it. He simply placed it there, as if your rejection had unleashed a flood he could no longer contain. It was not that you didn't care, you did. But his pain had transformed into your burden, a weight you never agreed to bear. Guilt accompanied you, naturally. How could it not? But there was also an expanding awareness of your own boundaries, of the significance of protecting your emotional energy. Each of them left marks, soft ones, profound ones, jagged around the edges. Yet they all carried a common thread. They compelled you to confront yourself in uncomfortable and necessary ways. Then, amidst the turmoil, the reflector emerged. He was neither flashy nor overwhelming. There was an assuredness about him, like someone who listens not only to your words but to the silences that accompany them. With him, things felt softer, slower. As if standing in a room filled with noise and suddenly realizing there's a quiet corner where you can breathe. Perhaps it was the way he could hold your gaze for minutes, those deep stares where words cease to matter. Or how he listened intently when you discussed the universe, life, and the delicate, tender aspects of yourself that often remained obscured. He did not rush to fix or advise, he simply saw you. And for the first time in a long while, that felt sufficient. However, even with the reflector, old patterns began to resurface. The overthinking, the moments of questioning everything, the pace, the closeness, the silences. You worried about becoming too attached, about falling too quickly, about losing yourself. Because that was your greatest fear, wasn't it? That by loving someone else, you would forget how to love yourself. Then, the lice incident occurred. Yes, lice. The literal pests that paradoxically became the metaphorical mess you did not realize you needed. There is something humbling about having someone comb through your hair, searching for the tiny invaders causing your scalp to itch. It strips away any illusion of perfection, leaving only raw, human connection. The reflector did not flinch. He carefully combed through your hair, even mentioning that he found the process soothing. In an unexpected way, it became a quiet act of intimacy, a moment that conveyed, "I'm here, even amid the chaos." Then, there was the dream, the one where you and the reflector both experienced an earthquake in your sleep. Upon waking, you shared your experiences only to discover no earthquake had actually occurred. Yet somehow, you both dreamed the same thing. Was it a sign, a shared subconscious tremor? Or perhaps just one of those moments that remind you how profoundly connected we can be, even when we fail to fully comprehend it? Schrödinger's cat comes to mind, how we inhabit these in-between states, both present and absent, connected and isolated, seen and unseen. You, too, existed in that space, part of you repeating old patterns and part of you breaking them, both fearful of intimacy and deeply yearning for it, until someone, the reflector, assisted you in opening the box. However, growth is not linear. There were still spirals. Instances where nostalgia pulled harder than reason, where you texted the ex out of loneliness, where you questioned whether you were making any progress at all. You pondered if every step forward was merely another loop that returned to the same starting point. Yet there were also moments of tranquility, times when you practiced yoga, not to achieve a perfect pose but to feel your breath. Instances when you sat in silence, not out of discomfort but out of peace. These small acts, they mattered. They reminded you that becoming is not about erasing the past but integrating it. The reflector is not perfect, neither are you. But perhaps that is why this feels distinct. Because, for the first time, you are not pursuing an illusion or trying to fix someone. You are simply being in the messy, beautiful in-between, where connection flourishes not from grand gestures but from small, quiet acts. Like brushing someone's hair. Like sharing the same dream. Like sitting under soft light, discussing the universe, and realizing that maybe this all of it is enough. Because here is what I have learned from your story. We are all simply trying to navigate our way to ourselves, to others, to the spaces where we feel safe enough to be seen, flaws and all. Sometimes, that journey resembles an earthquake. Other times, it manifests as someone offering you a bowl of soup when you feel most fragile. And that is love, or something akin to it. But the true lesson, it is not about discovering the right person or breaking every old pattern at once. It is about learning to stay not just with someone else, but with yourself. To create space for the messy, contradictory parts of who you are. To remain with the discomfort without fleeing. To allow someone to see you and to gain clearer insight into yourself in the process. And isn't that the true work, the most challenging work, to stay here, now, and trust that, perhaps, just perhaps, it is enough. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for stealing my car back in the middle of the night? All right, Reddit, I will skip the lengthy introduction, but I am at my wit's end and losing my sanity. To provide some context, I am a 20-year-old male who met a girl named Farrell, a 19-year-old female pseudonym, 3 years ago. We flirted off and on. She was in relationships, but we maintained occasional communication and developed a substantial connection. We even discussed marriage. Farrell came from a challenging background. When we reconnected, she was in a dire situation, being used and mistreated by a couple. I was able to help her escape that situation, leading her to move in with someone I believed was a mutual friend. However, that friend took advantage of Farrell while she was intoxicated, twice, and concealed it from me. By the time I discovered what had occurred, we had officially started dating. We took a trip that was 19 hours away to assist her in rehomming a dog, and it felt like our relationship was becoming serious. I offered her the option to stay with my parents and me until I could afford an apartment. She accepted, and we began living together. Though she looked for apartments on her own, she eventually became comfortable with my family. My parents only requested that she obtain her general educational development certificate, maintain a job, and attend church with them once a week in exchange for free accommodation. From my perspective, things went well for a few months as we grew closer and learned more about each other. Initially, we faced issues related to her lack of health insurance, leading her to visit the emergency room for numerous minor ailments early on. She struggled with budgeting and spent every paycheck she earned, despite having almost no expenses. Additionally, adapting to a supportive family environment, which often involved extensive communication, was difficult for her. We began to argue frequently, and she felt I was allowing my mother to dictate our relationship while I attempted to mediate. This tension culminated one night when she asked an old teacher from her freshman year of high school to pick her up to visit a bookstore while I was replacing an engine in my car. My mother, a very caring but traumatized hyper-religious woman, expressed concern about the situation, especially since their location indicated they had spent 2 hours parked in the lot of a nearby mall. I was consumed by the idea that she might be doing something deceptive. I insisted she return home, but she stopped at a corner about 1,000 feet from my house where I couldn't see her and waited until I arrived in a rage. The teacher brought her home afterward, and my mother confronted him, accusing him of being a creep and trying to deceive her son. During this time, I had gone to an auto parts store to cool off. When I returned, Farrell was yelling at my parents. Although I believed she was being unfaithful, I intervened to defuse the situation until my mother entered the room. She shared her past, explaining her reaction, and they seemed to reconcile. While nothing inappropriate occurred between them, that incident left me shaken. When I needed her support on a project, she was not there for me. About a month before the incident with her former teacher, Farrell began expressing that I was not meeting her physical or emotional needs. Her primary love language was receiving gifts, and she maintained that her requests for numerous items or the most expensive steak at restaurants were her way of seeking affection. We clashed frequently regarding finances since I was trying to save for a major project on my car and build a nest egg for when we moved out together. I found Farrell a car for $500 from a friend. It was old and needed work, but she agreed we would fix it together. She did not have the funds at the time, so I covered the purchase outright. She initially sent my parents money for the first 2 months as rent, which was saved in an account. They sent me $300 from that, and I began teaching her to drive so she could obtain her driver's license. Although she never reimbursed me for the car, she managed to buy new tattoos and clothes. While she lived with me, I did not worry about it because I wanted to give her time. Now comes the controversy. She approached me while I was working on that significant project on my car, saying she could no longer live with my parents and that some of my old friends had offered to take her in. Although I was wary of the situation and wanted her to stay longer so we could move out together with 2 functioning cars, I ultimately accepted her decision to relocate. This occurred just over a month ago. I had been working hard to make her feel special, but once she moved out, she acted as if she wanted nothing to do with me. I distinctly remember bringing her flowers while she was shopping, one of the things she had requested, and I was practically shooed away by her and her friends. I later learned that my old friend had invited another guy to be around her to cheer her up during our difficulties. 2 weeks before Valentine's Day, she told me she moved out to find space away from me, stating she needed to be single to get her life together. I accepted this and attempted to move forward. A week later, she contacted me, claiming she had car problems and was stranded. I went to assist her because I still did not want to see her stuck in the cold. However, she was dishonest. She merely wanted to discuss our breakup and conveyed that she aimed to focus on herself while still wanting to talk to me. This led to a casual relationship. We started seeing each other daily. She began using our pet names, changed my wallpaper, shared our pictures on social media stories, and made out with me in public around friends. I genuinely believed she was trying to change. However, less than a week after Valentine's Day, she spent the remainder of her money at the arcade on our shared card without informing me. I engaged with my friends, and the situation escalated into a fight. I reimbursed her for her arcade points and sat in my car, asking her to come out and talk when she was ready. She did not come out until everyone transitioned to a second location and decided to ride with my friend to document videos of my car. Although I was flattered, I conveyed that I needed her at that moment and that we could film videos later. She became upset, insisting that her happiness must come before my happiness, and texted me the following morning, stating she wanted to maintain emotional distance because she forgot what she needed to do. My heart was shattered again within just a few days. I exited a group chat with her and several of my friends, trying to distance myself from everything. My friend started a confrontation with her, and everyone began taking sides while I was in a cold shower, crying. When I returned to my phone, it was flooded with messages claiming Darren, pseudonym, was trying to hook up with Farrell, accompanied by screenshots. None of the evidence was directly incriminating, and I tried to assure people that it wasn't happening. However, over 3 days, 6 different individuals notified me of the same allegations and urged me to reclaim my car. I tried to ignore it and suppress my feelings until I made the mistake of checking TikTok, where I came across both Darren's and her stories. She posted 4 TikToks about infidelity and finding a better partner 30 minutes after our breakup. She sent me a TikTok labeling me as an abusive, manipulative ex and posted a story about a guy doing something she liked in bed, while Darren was simultaneously sharing he was at her apartment with her roommates. In that moment, I lost control. I enlisted a friend to help me retrieve the car since I could not allow someone who was swiftly moving on to another relationship days after our breakup to remain dependent on my insurance while driving a car registered in my name. I left the complex in a fury and returned all 300 she had sent me, then placed the car in storage at 2 a.m. The following day, she attempted to reason with me, but I was still overwhelmed and on the brink of a mental breakdown. She insisted she did not sleep with him and that it was just unfortunate timing. She even had my old friend vouch for her, leading everyone to claim I was the one being unreasonable and that I needed to return the car. I can acknowledge that I should have communicated with them instead of taking the car back. However, I cannot simply return the car because the title and keys are no longer under my control. To express my remorse for everything, I sent her enough money to repurchase the car from my father and offered to cover her first month's insurance if she would be open to discussing this in a few months or years. In summary, I reclaimed my car from a girl who used me for 6 months, and now everyone despises me. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for wanting to kick out my husband because he chose his job over me? Hello, everyone. I am new to sharing my thoughts and find myself in a challenging situation. My husband of 10 years, let's refer to him as Jeff, has finally fulfilled his dream of becoming a police officer. However, I feel as though he has entirely deserted me and our children for his career. Let me provide some context. My husband and I have always been inseparable. We attended the same middle and high schools, worked together, and even married relatively early in our relationship. He was 20 and I was 22. Just before I returned to school, he expressed his desire to become an officer. Initially, I was taken aback, as he had never liked law enforcement. However, whenever we saw a trooper, I noticed a spark in his eyes. He began to work out consistently, submitted applications for every available position, took all the necessary tests, and eventually received the call. At the time, I was pregnant with our first child, whom I will refer to as Minnie, and we were thrilled. I could see my husband's dreams finally coming to fruition. 2 weeks after Minnie was born, he left for a live-in academy. I was left alone but wanted to support him nonetheless. A week into the program, he was injured and had to return home. I cannot express how depressed he was. Despite having our beautiful Minnie, nothing gave him joy. Holidays and birthdays felt somber. It wasn't until the new year that I encouraged him to reach out to the academy again. When he did, and they informed him he could attend the academy again, his mood transformed. All his depression seemed to vanish, and he became my old husband again. For context, I struggled with postpartum depression, and Minnie had to stay in the neonatal intensive care unit for a few days due to an infection. He was supportive while he was home from the academy. I had to set aside my own feelings and birthday to comfort him and make him feel valued. Nothing I tried worked, and I felt alone and partnerless with Minnie. Once he got the call again, he became more affectionate and loving, and I became pregnant once more. This time, I was supporting him while pregnant with another baby, who wasn't even a year old at that time, so that he could attend the Live-In Academy. Once again, the stars did not align, and he left the academy. It wasn't because he missed me or the children. He got into an argument with a fellow classmate and was given the choice to resign or face termination. This time, he wasn't upset and chose to focus on finding a position with a local police department. During this period, he drastically downplayed my pregnancy and the assistance I required. He had always been laid back, but it became increasingly difficult to manage cleaning, taking care of Minnie, our pets, etc., while he spent his free time filling out applications. He could hardly be bothered to feed the cats, clean their litter box, pick up his socks, or walk the dogs. It got bad enough that I had to ask my dad for help. He was good about taking time off work when I needed him. However, as my due date approached, he stopped calling in sick because it would ruin his chances with another agency. On the day I went into labor, he couldn't leave work because he had no coverage. I had to wait for his parents and him to come home before I could go to the hospital. When he finally got home, he changed out of his clothes and started eating cookies instead of taking me to the hospital. By the time he parked, our second baby was almost here, and 20 minutes later we welcomed her to the family. I will call her May for this story. With 2 babies and him focused on working out and securing a position with a new agency, he missed my birthday and wasn't prepared for Christmas once again. I know parenting can be stressful. However, I felt so neglected during those moments. I realize I am comparing myself to others, but my husband has never excelled at holidays, gifts, etc. Therefore, I always plan something for myself. With recovery and 2 infants, I was unable to do so, making it incredibly lonely not to receive any special acknowledgement from a man I believed was my soulmate. Shortly after this period, an agency contacted him, and he began their 6-month academy. This time, he could return home at night. We discussed the arrangements before he started, and I became a full-time stay-at-home mom. I left my job, while he took a part-time role as a dad. Before he even began the academy, he was sworn in, an event he forgot to tell me about, which led me to miss it. His parents attended, but he neglected to inform me. This becomes relevant later. Once the 6 months concluded, I found myself overwhelmed with the entire situation. Not only did he neglect to assist me with both Minnie and May's birthdays, but he also forgot to purchase anything for Christmas. On one of the few date nights we had, I went to a show with him. The entire night ended in an argument because we had to return to the girls, and he needed to prepare for the academy the next morning. Note, this was one of the very few times I had been away from both of my children since their births, and it was supposed to be a special day to celebrate my 30th birthday. The week of his graduation, both children were sick, and no one could attend. His parents offered to watch the girls so I could go, and this is where I might be in the wrong, but I was so exhausted from the entire experience that I couldn't summon the energy to go. A bit more about that week. Minnie had a 105-degree fever, and I couldn't reach Jeff because cell phones were prohibited at the academy. He had the car, with the car seats in it, so I had to call his department to get in touch with him, and they sent him home. The night before he graduated, May had to be taken to the emergency room because she was struggling to breathe. That night, I told him I didn't want to attend the graduation for the kids' sake. He felt hurt but understood. However, I didn't feel like making the effort to go because I had missed the swearing-in ceremony earlier and didn't feel like a part of his graduation. During the 6 months he was in the academy, I was operating in survival mode and was finally winding down. My physical health deteriorated. I gained a significant amount of weight, had irregular sleep patterns due to breastfeeding, and felt like a single mother. What also deeply hurt my feelings was that he posted about his graduation on a platform that I do not use. For context, he had never shared our wedding news or the births of our children. After 10 years of silence, he chose to post about his graduation on a platform I cannot access. I only knew about it because his mother took a screenshot and shared it on her Facebook account. Now, to the present day. Upon his graduation, he told me that I could return to full-time work. He even outlined a schedule with me, could go back to the gym, could resume my education and finish my degree, and that he would have more time for the kids and me. However, this has yet to materialize. A month has passed, and he is home even less than before. I have had to adjust my schedule because his shifts often extend beyond his clock-out time. He has been called into work on his days off, including holidays like Valentine's Day, and he neither bought nor prepared anything for me. Meanwhile, I got him a card and a pre-order label for the new Assassin's Creed game. I feel increasingly alone. On a day when I was upset, rather than resolving the issue with me, he took a call from one of his academy friends. I have loved and supported this man for 10 years. Am I missing something significant? Should I continue to support him through this, or has his new job become the center of his life? I could be mistaken, but I feel as though I am sacrificing everything for him, and he does not even acknowledge my existence. He used to call me during his commute to and from work. He no longer does that. He used to text me to inquire about my day. Now he only discusses his shifts. This brings me to today. I texted him to express my desire for a divorce and requested that he move out because I no longer feel as if we have a relationship. I woke up to find the cats not fed, the dogs not walked, Minnie in a dirty diaper, laundry not folded, and him preparing to leave for work. I am starting to question the purpose of having him in my life. I have no friends, no job, 2 young children, and a husband who is absent for 12 hours a day. So, Reddit, am I in the wrong for wanting him to leave? Or should I continue to support him more than ever and stick it out? Story 4. I feel guilty and am unsure how to leave my girlfriend of 1 year. I apologize for the excessively lengthy message, and I regret any spelling or grammatical errors, as I am composing this on my mobile device at 2 a.m. Please keep that in mind as you read. Summary. My feelings for my girlfriend, 18 female, are diminishing due to her emotional outbursts, her tendency to be hypocritical, and her constant desire to be with me, which prevents me from having time for myself and my friends. However, I feel trapped because of her thoughtful gifts, the potential emotional impact of a breakup on her, and the length of our relationship. I, 18 male, have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, 18 female, for nearly a year, approaching 2 years next month. However, lately, my feelings for her have shifted, and I no longer envision a future with her. There are several aspects of the relationship that contribute to my unhappiness, and I sense that my feelings have gradually faded over the past 6 months. Initially, my girlfriend and I were quite content, but ongoing issues have become exhausting. She shows a lot of care for me and is quite obsessed, constantly wanting to spend time together, messaging me at all hours and surprising me with gifts. Despite her gestures, I don't feel the same affection I once did. At the beginning of our relationship, I was more invested than she was. I expressed my feelings frequently and initiated plans. While she did reciprocate to some extent, I often felt that I was putting in more effort. Now, the dynamic seems to have flipped. She constantly sends me messages and makes plans, urging me to spend time with her rather than with my friends. I believe my love for her has significantly diminished. The things I used to enjoy doing for her no longer appeal to me, and though she has started to show affections similar to mine when we began, my feelings have not returned. This change in her behavior started about 7 months ago. However, I had already stopped investing fully in the relationship prior to that, as my efforts were not met with the same level of commitment from her. Now she expects me to contribute as she does, but I find myself unwilling. I feel guilty because the love I once had is gone, and although I try to express kind sentiments, they do not reflect my true feelings, but rather what I think she wants to hear. I attribute the decline in my feelings to her sometimes volatile temperament. She can easily become irate over trivial matters or overreact in certain situations. She has acknowledged her outbursts and promised to improve, but little has changed. When I disagree with her, she often reacts with anger or frustration and takes my words as personal attacks. I recall an incident in a parking lot where she hastily reversed her vehicle and then expressed annoyance. I calmly suggested that she could have taken her time, yet her response was to refuse to communicate with me for the remainder of that drive. She later apologized, and admitted that she didn't understand her reaction. There have been many similar instances where she has stopped talking to me or has become combative, only to later concede that she was in the wrong. Additionally, she expresses outrage at my use of profanity during arguments, despite using it herself when addressing me. I typically don't take her insults seriously, but her hypocrisy bothers me. She often claims that my actions upset her, prompting me to adjust my behavior like avoiding swearing, but then she does the same to me during her moments of anger. It feels as though she believes her actions are acceptable while mine are not. My girlfriend's clinginess and obsession are also overwhelming. She frequently begs to spend time with me, leaving me feeling as though I lack personal space. I have communicated my need for alone time, which disappoints her, but my life revolves around her, school, and work. I enjoy solitary activities like watching television or simply resting, but she often insists on visiting. When I express my desire for personal space, she doesn't accept my refusal easily and continues to plead to come over. While I do enjoy our time together and find joy in her company, there are many moments when I prefer solitude. Whenever I decline an invitation, it often feels as though she intentionally makes me feel guilty, which frustrates me. I have conveyed this to her, yet she continues the behavior. I have been considering ending the relationship, but it feels daunting given the time we've invested. I have met her family, and she has met mine, and since we share a class, I would have to face her regularly after a breakup. This makes me feel uncomfortable, as she is the only person I communicate with in that setting. I reluctantly joined that class for her sake, which I now regret. The thought of cutting her from my life is overwhelming. Another factor holding me back from ending things is the sadness it would cause her. She obsessively cares for me, and I can only imagine the emotional impact a breakup would have on her, considering her previous struggles with mental health. Additionally, the gifts she occasionally gives me complicate my decision. She surprises me with food and insists on treating me to different things, displaying a thoughtful side that I would feel guilty dismissing. My efforts to make her happy have not gone unnoticed. I buy her treats and shower her with love during special occasions, but her gestures often exceed mine, making it hard to imagine leaving her when she is consistently considerate. Moreover, her outlook on life and future aspirations differ significantly from mine. She lacks ambition, while I actively pursue self-improvement and have clear career goals. I devote time to exercising and strive to better myself, whereas she often complains about her appearance and habits. While I offer her reassurance about her beauty, I suggest that if she is dissatisfied, she should take action to change it. Unfortunately, she tends to make excuses and blames external factors instead of confronting her challenges. I worry that her disinterest in striving for a better life could present larger issues in the future. I am deeply troubled by these feelings and the fact that I no longer have the same affection for her. Despite my reluctance to end the relationship due to the possible repercussions, I am unsure what to do moving forward. I would greatly appreciate any advice you may have. Thank you.